Chapter 351. Olivia was stunned. Even when they were back on the cruise ship, Ethan hadn't kissed her so deeply. Just as she realized something was wrong, she was already trapped and couldn't break free. Ethan's limbs were wrapped around her like thick vines, giving her no time to catch her breath. Ethan might have held back when he was conscious due to his guilt. Now that he was not in his right mind, he was acting on instinct. Olivia tried to struggle but to no avail. Ethan felt grounded when he could smell her scent. "Wake up, Ethan. Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Ethan held her hands above her head, effortlessly diffusing her attacks. There was a lot of sweat on his forehead. He said hoarsely, "Liv, I've never been so sure of what I'm doing. I told you, we'll have kids of our own." Kids. Olivia didn't understand why Ethan was so hung up on the subject. She just wanted to get away. "Let me go, Ethan. Don't make me hate you. If hate can become the bond that binds us, then hate me all you want." There was only a sliver of light shining into the room. It illuminated the area around Ethan's chin. His face was hidden in the dark, like a rose blooming in the shadows, seductive but poisonous. Ethan fell back to sleep with a high fever. Olivia gritted her teeth as she headed to the bathroom to wash up. She even went back and cleaned Ethan up. She didn't want to be entangled with Ethan anymore. Since he thought it was a dream, she was prepared to let him keep thinking that. She acted as if nothing happened and exited the room. "He's still feverish and hasn't woken up yet. The doctor has already given him medication. I really hope he gets better soon." Colin said, "Mrs. Miller, you might not know this, but Mr. Miller hasn't rested well in a long time. Especially the few days following your kidnapping. He searched for you without resting. He really cares about you." Olivia didn't want to discuss that with Colin, so she changed the subject. "Let him sleep a little bit more and see if the fever goes down. He's in good shape. It's probably no big deal." Colin was at a loss for words. Olivia had completely ignored what he said. Colin understood that Olivia didn't want to associate herself with Ethan too much, so he gave up on the topic. Raising his head to look at Olivia, he said, "Mrs. Miller, your face looks red. Do you also have a fever? Do you need me to get the doctor for you?" "I'm fine. I just showered in the bathroom just now. My skin is just flushed from the hot water. Since he's not going to be awake for a while and I didn't sleep well last night, I'll sleep in the other bedroom. Let me know when he wakes up." Olivia spoke very naturally, so Colin didn't suspect anything was wrong. "All right, please use the bedroom as you please. This is your home too. There's nothing wrong even if you sleep on the same bed as Mr. Miller." Olivia thought about something and said coldly while suppressing her unease, "Don't forget that we're divorced. I wouldn't have come here today if I didn't need to talk to him about something." She then went back upstairs to the second bedroom. Shutting the curtains, she buried herself in the sheets. She was very tired, but she couldn't fall asleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she'd remember what happened in Ethan's room. Olivia rubbed her temples tiredly. She hoped that Ethan would only think of what happened as a dream so that he would forget about it when he woke up. Chapter 352. Ethan slept for a long time. When he woke up at night, he looked beside him as soon as he opened his eyes. But he was alone in the bed. He lifted the blanket to see himself fully dressed. He felt disappointed as he thought what had happened was a dream. Maybe it was because he missed Olivia too much and was too afraid of losing her. Olivia would hate him even more if he really did what he thought he did. He held his head in his hands. He still felt a little lightheaded, but the sleep cleared up his fatigue. The fever was gone, and he felt much better. He took a shower to freshen himself up before leaving the room. He saw Madame Burgess cooking up a storm in the kitchen. Her face lit up when she saw Ethan coming downstairs. "You're finally awake, Mr. Miller. You must be hungry after such a long nap. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I've made a lot of food that you and Mrs. Miller like." Ethan frowned, asking, "Who?" "Mrs. Miller, of course. You were still bedridden with a high fever when she came. You probably haven't seen her yet." Eden's eyes lit up as he asked, "She's still here?" "Yes." Mrs. Miller was very tired. "She seemed to want to ask you about something." But she saw that you were sick and didn't want to disturb you. She's resting up in the other bedroom. Madam Burgess suddenly grabbed Ethan's hand and said mysteriously, Mr. Miller, I know you still have feelings for her. You have to make use of this chance. Don't drive her away anymore. She has also been sleeping for the entire day. Why don't you get her to come down for dinner? Okay. Looking out the window, Ethan saw that the storm had dissipated. It was like his relationship with Olivia. It was calm for now. Ethan still hadn't decided how he would deal with Leia. It was as if two voices were arguing about what he should do every step of the way. If you love her, you should tell her everything. She's a very understanding woman. She'll understand that you're being used. Don't be naive. Even if you didn't hurt Jeff, your sister is the one behind everything. You two are responsible for the downfall of the Fordham family. If you tell her the truth, she'll hate you even more. She's the victim, she deserves to know. The truth often hurts the most. Since you have all the facts, you just need to make it up to her from now on. Do you really want to lose her? Ethan had made up his mind when he arrived at Olivia's door. His gaze was resolute. He had loved Olivia for 10 whole years. Even when her hatred for him was at its peak, he never gave up. He wouldn't give up now. Ethan opened the door cautiously and walked in slowly. He could roughly make out Olivia on the bed with the light outside the door. She was fast asleep. Her face was slightly flushed, and she was tossing and turning in bed uneasily. She murmured, "No, don't." Ethan suddenly felt a pang of guilt. Olivia had been through so much danger recently. She couldn't even sleep properly. He put his hand on her arm and shook it lightly. "Wake up, Liv." Olivia was still drowsy, her mind all fuzzy. For a moment, she couldn't tell if she was awake or dreaming. She was still immersed in the time they were close, which was before their divorce. She kissed Ethan without hesitation. Her sudden intimacy shocked Ethan. It was like the dream that he had becoming a reality. He was frozen in place. He didn't dare to move, lest he wake up from the dream. The shroud of darkness made it hard to tell if everything was real or a dream. He allowed Olivia to put her arms around his neck and grind her lips against his. With every movement, his rationality slipped away, and their breaths grew heavier and heavier. Chapter 353. Olivia dreamt about the time when Ethan still pampered her. Back then, he built a manor of roses for her just because she told him roses were pretty. There were dozens of roses inside the estate, each with different shapes and colors. They were carefully tended by gardeners. It took 1 whole year for the garden to take shape. It was ready on the day of her birthday. Ethan told her he was busy that day and couldn't have dinner with her. She was disappointed and ended the call with a crestfallen expression, but she didn't blame him. Ethan was the head of the Miller family, and Miller Group had a lot of businesses that he needed to tend to. It was only natural that he was so busy. She thought it wasn't a big deal that he forgot about her birthday. There was always the next one. She was still young and had plenty of birthdays to look forward to. She baked a cake for herself that afternoon. But she messed up several times because she was in a bad mood. She didn't care about the quality of the cake she made. She put some cream on one of the failed ones and promised to make Ethan eat it when he came home. Olivia had never felt like a day was so long. Ethan never came back, but Kelvin did. He told her that he was bringing her somewhere. Olivia was taken to a strange place in a daze with her eyes blindfolded. She wondered what Ethan was up to. She caught the scent of flowers before she took off the blindfold. The smell was different from the delicate fragrance of gardenia flowers. It was a richer scent. Someone took off her blindfold. Opening her eyes, she saw Ethan in a suit, smiling at her. She nudged him, saying, "Didn't you say you couldn't make it back?" Her voice was stuck in her throat as she realized they were in a sea of roses. There were colorful flowers in full bloom wherever she looked. She was stunned by the sight. You. Olivia was at a loss for words. She couldn't even complete a sentence. Ethan hugged her from behind and asked, "Do you like it? I built this garden of roses just for you." Olivia felt like she finally understood why people said that if you were with the right person, every day would be Valentine's Day. You big liar. The flowers looked stunning under the glow of the setting sun. Olivia tiptoed and kissed him on the lips. She whispered, "I love it." Ethan's smile looked warmer than usual under the evening sun. He said, "Happy birthday, Liv." He might be cold by name, and he might not know how to express his love with words, but he always gave her the best of everything. He would remember her preferences and keep her every word in mind. In the past 2 years, Olivia often had nightmares. She rarely ever had sweet dreams anymore. The Ethan in her dream was caring and courteous. It was the side of him that she loved deeply. She could reveal her best self to him without any reservations. Olivia was injected with drugs last night, so her mind was still fuzzy. She thought she was still in the Manor of Roses. Ethan's trembling hands were wrapped around Olivia's waist. She was wearing silk pajamas, which felt so soft and smooth. He leaned in to kiss Olivia. It felt exactly like the sensation he felt in his dream. Ethan was overjoyed, and his heartbeat accelerated quickly. Ethan was afraid that Olivia would wake up. Just then, she grabbed his collar and said, "You still haven't told me if you've fallen for another woman out there." Ethan hugged her tightly like he used to and whispered, "There is no other woman. It's always been just you." Chapter 354. Just as Ethan wanted to savor the moment, Madame Burgess' loud voice came from downstairs. "Mr. Miller, is Mrs. Miller awake yet?" Her powerful voice penetrated the walls and went straight into Olivia's ears. Olivia instantly snapped back to reality with a chilling realization. She wasn't dreaming. She stopped moving. She could only make out Ethan's silhouette in the darkness and couldn't see his expression. She was utterly in shock. She felt like she was about to explode in embarrassment when she saw that her pajamas were undone. She quickly dove onto the bed and covered herself with her blanket. Ethan was enveloped in immense disappointment. With a bitter smile, he quickly suppressed his emotions. "The food's ready. Come downstairs and have some," Ethan said in a deep voice. He walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. Olivia, who was hiding under the blanket, was blushing. She couldn't believe the things she just did. She was so close to stripping Ethan and having her way with him. She felt mortified. She slowly got out of the bed and went to wash her face. The cool tap water helped cool down her burning cheeks. She saw the mark that Ethan left on her neck. They covered up the marks he left in the afternoon. Olivia thought that worked in her favor. She wanted their relationship to be over and didn't want further complications. She had already composed herself when she went downstairs. Ethan helped her into her seat. Madame Burgess wanted to give them some time to spend alone, so she left right after cooking. Neither of them spoke, and the atmosphere was eerily quiet. "What happened just now?" Olivia spoke up first. "I was injected with some drugs last night. I wasn't in my right mind just now. I thought I was dreaming." "What did you dream about?" "I dreamed about the time we were newly married," Olivia told him honestly. "It's just a dream at the end of the day. It has been almost 3 years since that time." Ethan felt guilty when he heard what she said. Olivia took a few bites of the food and said slowly, "The reason I'm here is to talk to you about something important." "Tell me." "I suspect that your sister is still alive." Ethan's hands that were cutting up the steak froze. He looked at Olivia's face and responded instinctively, "Impossible. I saw her body with my own eyes." Olivia knew Ethan would have a huge reaction. She tried her best to speak calmly. "I know that, but the body had been in the sea for so long when you picked it up. It had also been partially eaten by fish. You weren't able to see what the body used to look like, right?" "I did a DNA test." "Yes, that's what I'm trying to get to. Leia joined this toxic Hive organization that you spoke of. It's a very influential organization. They bought out the person who did the test for you. Leia's DNA was used in the test. That's why the DNA test results showed that you were siblings. We all thought the body was Leia's, but she had been in the wind since then. She set us up repeatedly behind the scenes. How can you be so sure that she's in Toxic Hive? Even I haven't seen her in more than 10 years. Olivia explained, "I saw her last night. I thought you were the one who told Chris where I was. I didn't expect her to be the one who leaked my location. She only wore a face mask this time, and I saw her eyes. They looked exactly like your sister's eyes when she was young." Chapter 355. Ethan was surprised that Olivia was able to recognize Leia by her eyes. She had the same thought as him. Ethan began to feel anxious and uneasy. Olivia was afraid that he wouldn't believe her. She took a sip of lemon water to moisten her throat and said, "I know this may be hard to believe, but I have a way to validate my claim. We just need to take Jody's bones for testing, and the truth will be revealed." Ethan gripped his cutlery tighter as he said deeply, "It can't be done." "Why? The body was cremated. The high temperature would have ruined the integrity of the DNA. Even if I allowed you to dig up the coffin and retrieve a sample, you'd only get some ashes." Olivia slumped back in her chair and said with a shaky voice, "How can that be? I went to her grave this morning. I saw signs that the soil on her grave had been filled back in hastily. Could someone has dug her body up before us?" Ethan's back stiffened. He didn't expect her to have been to the grave already. "I'll have someone look into it. It must have been toxic Hive. They must have gone there to take away the evidence. But this could indirectly prove that." Ethan interrupted her and said, "Prove what?" "That my sister is a murderer." Olivia knew Ethan would be defensive when she brought up his sister. "Currently, I suspect that she is." "What about her motive? If she did it, why did she do it? Why would she spend so much time, effort, and resources to kill you? She went missing when she was a child. What grudge could she possibly have against you?" Olivia tried to explain urgently, "I haven't found out her motive yet. But it's true that she wants me dead." Last night, before she could tell Ethan about what happened last night, he cut her off impatiently, "Enough of this. I don't want to hear any more of this ridiculous story. I know my conclusion sounds absurd or even funny. But don't you want to get to the bottom of this? Don't you want to know who sabotaged our relationship behind the scenes? She's been playing us like fools. Naturally, I'll get to the bottom of this." Ethan lowered his head to hide the guilt in his eyes. Olivia wanted to say something more. Ethan pushed the plate of steak that he sliced up in front of her and said, "All right, let's eat for now. I'll take care of this." Olivia understood that Ethan no longer wanted to discuss the matter, so she stopped talking. They no longer spoke another word after that. After dinner, Olivia wiped her mouth and got up. "I'm full. It's getting late. I'll be off." Upon hearing that, Ethan threw his knife on his plate and said, "Where are you going?" "No matter the reason why I returned, I'm back now. We're divorced. We should keep our distance. I bet you're going to that Moriarty punk, right?" Olivia was displeased with how he addressed Colin. But she tried to de-escalate the situation and said, "I told you before, I see him as a younger brother. There's nothing between us. You might not see him that way, but how can you be sure that it's the same for him?" Ethan closed in on her and said, "Liv, there isn't a single man in the world that would treat a woman well without ulterior motives. Nothing comes for free." He lifted her chin with his finger, saying, "Do you know how much effort, time, and money he spent to get you away from me? Your family is already bankrupt. What else would he be after? Liv, every gift has a price. What do you think he wants in exchange?" Olivia disagreed with his point of view. "Ethan, do you think everyone is as wicked as you? We were friends as kids, which is why he helped me. Just because you're heartless and indifferent doesn't mean everyone else is the same." Chapter 356. Ethan said slowly, "You were friends with him. Why haven't you told me about that? How else are you related to him?" Anger flared in Ethan's eyes. Olivia was upset. "Are you and Marina the only ones allowed to be childhood friends? Why can't I be childhood friends with Colin? I didn't tell you about that because I didn't see the need. He was just a playmate. Just because you have malicious intent doesn't mean he's the same." Smirking, Ethan said, "You think I'm malicious and he's good." The mocking smile made Olivia feel uncomfortable. But with everything said, Olivia retorted stubbornly, "Am I wrong? You cheated on me while you were married to me, and you even have kids with her. If you're not the bad guy here, no one else would be." Ethan started to breathe heavily from the rage he felt. "Olivia, do you even know what kind of person he is? And what he has done? What could he possibly do?" Olivia recalled her phone call to Colin that didn't go through and the fact that Ethan got into trouble last night. She wondered if Colin was also dragged into this matter. Ethan pointed to his chest, saying, you tricked me into letting him go on the boat. I complied because I didn't want to hurt you. What about him? He shot me here the moment he got the chance to do so. Confusion flashed in Olivia's eyes. Ethan added, you want to ask why I'm still alive, right? Well, I would have been dead if I wasn't wearing a bulletproof vest. And if he hadn't tried to play it safe by aiming at my heart and had shot my head instead, I'd either be dead or in a coma right now. Colin's warm smile appeared in Olivia's mind. She muttered, how could this? You might think he's an innocent young man. But have you ever thought about it closely? He was the first person to find you even though no one else could. Why would he know where you were? And you also mentioned that he has a wound on his back. Olivia anxiously replied, yes, I saw it with my own eyes. How could that be fake? Did you know that it was an all-out gunfight at the hospital that night? Who would use a knife in a situation like that? A gunfight, Olivia echoed. Gunfights were something that only appeared in movies for regular people. Seems like he also told you that 4 groups of people were trying to take your father. But he didn't tell you how many casualties there were, huh? Olivia asked with quivering lips. How bad was it? Ethan took his phone out and showed her the security footage of what happened. The scene was chaotic. Even though the guns were fitted with silencers, Olivia could still see the bullets hitting people and blood splattering everywhere. People were falling one after the other. The victims included doctors, nurses, patients, and family members. Even cleaners weren't spared. Everything happened so quickly that no one could react. No one would have expected such a brutal gunfight to take place out of nowhere in this peaceful age. By the time people started to process what was happening, others were already lying in pools of blood. Some people didn't even have the time to scream. The victims fell one after another way quicker than what movies showed. None of them were prepared. In a matter of seconds, they were already down. The white walls were splattered with blood, and people were sprawled all over the corridor. Some were still moving, but others were already dead. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. It was way worse than what she'd imagined. It was hell on earth. She finally understood why the authorities wanted to keep the incident a secret. If news about the incident got out, it would definitely shock and terrify the public. Ethan asked coldly, let me ask you this. Do you still think it's possible that he was stabbed in such an intense shootout? Chapter 357. Olivia was rendered speechless. In such a situation, Colin would have died if he had drawn his firearm too late. No one would have been using a melee weapon. Colin didn't tell her anything about what went down. He casually summed up what happened in a single sentence. Looking at the footage and thinking about Colin's innocent face, Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't expect the man she trusted to be so ruthless. If he wasn't hurt from that incident, where did the wound come from? Ethan held Olivia's chin in place with his finger. Liv, do you really not know why he did that? Hasn't he always been the innocent, gentle, and caring young man in your eyes? If he got hurt for your sake, wouldn't you feel guilt and remorse? Olivia blinked, but she wasn't able to deny what Ethan said. He continued, just because he's young, it doesn't mean he's not manipulative. If I hadn't utilized extraordinary means, he would have gotten you out of the country. I wouldn't have been able to find you then. Ethan saw that Olivia was silent, so he showed her the security footage from another angle. I've reviewed footage of the incident several dozens of times. This person should be Colin. Everyone's faces were concealed. It couldn't have been easy for Ethan to spot a man he wasn't very familiar with in such a chaotic scene. Olivia looked at where Ethan was pointing and saw a man with a slender build. He looked tinier than the people around him. That was the body of a younger man who hadn't fully developed yet. She saw the man take several shots. Olivia previously learned how to shoot a gun from Jack for some time. She could tell how good Colin's marksmanship was. Olivia had no words to defend him when she saw him aim at a nurse and open fire without hesitation. She couldn't see his expression, but she could imagine that he must have looked emotionless. Jack had told her before that shooters must remain calm when opening fire, or their hands would shake and they would miss their target. If Colin had even a little compassion, his aim wouldn't have been so accurate. Every single shot was on point. Olivia suddenly realized she had learned nothing about Colin during their time together. Do you still think he's a kind young man after seeing this? Olivia was speechless. It was apparent that her worldview was shattered from the tears that streamed down her face. Ethan placed his hands on her shoulders and said patiently, Liv, that person has been harboring malicious intent since your first meeting with him. Do you remember the time he was drugged on the cruise ship? I checked the security footage after the incident. He saw Callista spiking the drink, but he still drank it. Why do you think he did that? Liv, you've lived a sheltered life. You've never seen true darkness. So you'll never understand how terrifying humans can be. Olivia's eyes were emotionless. Staring at Ethan, she asked, so you knew there was something wrong since then? Yes, but I didn't want to alert him. I wanted to use him to get to bigger fish. Even though he was cautious, I caught him off guard and discovered Toxic Hive's underground base. I brought people to capture the people there. He got angry and shot me. Wait, Colin is part of Toxic Hive. Yes. Olivia recalled the woman saying that Leo was going to settle the score. She realized that the person she had been looking for was hidden next to her all this time. Colin was Leo. She slumped back into the chair with a lifeless expression. She murmured, so he lied to me, and you lied to me too. Everyone's been playing me. I'm the only idiot here. Every one of you tricked me. Chapter 358. There were signs before that Olivia had failed to pick up on. Like the time Colin asked to visit Jeff. He looked at all of the data and even performed a check on him. Colin looked serious back then. It was an expression she had never seen on him before. Ethan saw Olivia's upset expression and hugged her. Liv, it's not like that. I want to protect you. I don't want to see you get hurt ever again. Raising her teary eyes to look at him, she said, but, you're the one who hurt me the most. Don't you think your words are absurd? Colin might have lied to me, but you're no saint either. So don't be calling the kettle black now. You have no right to say you'll keep me from getting hurt. Olivia escaped his embrace and said, thanks for telling me everything. Stop throwing a fit with me, Liv. Even though we took down Toxic Hive's base, all the important people in the organization took off. It's dangerous for you out there. Olivia looked him in the eye seriously. Wiping her tears, she asked, Ethan, if your sister isn't dead and she's out to get me, whose side would you be on? It was a very realistic question. The fact was that Leia was trying to kill Olivia. Ethan couldn't possibly defend her actions. That day will never come. Since he already knew Leia was the mastermind behind everything, he would take it upon himself to find her and ask her about her actions. How did the little girl from back then turn out like this? She even joined an international terrorist organization. Olivia smirked mockingly, saying, Ethan, why don't we make a bet? If the day really comes, you'll definitely choose your sister. No, Liv, trust me, you're the most important person in the world to me. Olivia didn't show much emotion on her face. She didn't want to argue with Ethan on the topic anymore. Ethan saw that she was determined to leave. You're just leaving like this. Don't you want to know what happened to your father? Olivia stopped and asked, do you know where he is? I don't. There were 4 groups of men that day, your mercenaries, Kelvin's men, and 2 groups of Toxic Hive people. I didn't know Colin's identity back then. But now that I know, it's easy to deduce that he's the one who took your father. Ethan walked toward Olivia and whispered in her car, you were willing to go with him because he took your father, right? Olivia was impressed that Ethan could guess what happened without her saying anything. Yes, he took my father away from here. I almost left with him too. He might be bad, but he never tried to hurt me. He just wanted to take me away from this place of suffering. Smiling coldly, Ethan said, did he want to bring you away from suffering, or did he want to keep you for himself? Liv, don't be too naive. Come with me. I'll show you what Toxic Hive really is. Olivia didn't want to do that, but she couldn't convince Ethan otherwise. He dragged her to his study and showed her a number of classified documents. Here's some information about Toxic Hive. Take a look. Olivia's expression became horrified as she read the documents. This information would usually be entirely out of her reach as a regular person. Did they really do all these things? She asked in disbelief. Yes. Those were all cases that had appeared in the news all over the world. A few years back, a plague transmitted by rats broke out in Zealandia. Up to 1,000 people were killed. There was also the Golden Gate riot that shocked the world. Tens of thousands died in the most prosperous casino in the world. According to rumors, someone was infected with rabies and started to bite everyone around. It caused rabies to spread in the casino like wildfire. People were biting each other, and they ended up dying. That place used to be the best casino in the world, but it had been deserted since the incident. Thousands of important people from all over the world died in the incident. No one was able to provide an accurate statement of what happened. Those who survived the incident were scarred for life. Olivia's hands were shaking as she read to the end. Why would they do something like that? Chapter 359. It's simple. They want to test out the drugs they made. Ethan felt a little cranky and subconsciously reached for his cigarettes. Upon realizing that Olivia was still here, he stopped going for his cigarettes. He rubbed his nose awkwardly as he continued, some research is forbidden in every country, even for the World Health Organization. These research and experiments are usually inhumane and rejected by society. But these things brought some of the most extreme researchers together. Toxic Hive is a paradise for them. They can do their research however they want and don't have to think about their impact on others. Their only goals in life are to complete the research that they want to do. Olivia asked, so they won't care even if their research harms society. That's right. If there isn't anyone to test out the drugs they made, they'll release them into crowds of people and let those people become the test subjects for their drugs. They'll observe from afar and record the data to improve their creation. People are nothing but lab rats and statistics to them. Pursing his lips, Ethan continued, I won't deny that they've created a lot of medicine and contributed to society. But most of the time, they're lunatics who would do anything to accomplish their goals without regard for human life. The more Olivia read about Toxic Hive, the more fearful she felt. She finally understood how Colin could find a group of hardened mercenaries without much effort. Liv, he doesn't really care about your father. He's probably just using your father to control you. After our encounter with Toxic Hive, they probably went into hiding at another base. They probably won't come out and cause trouble for now. Colin might not show himself easily either. Ethan placed his hands on her shoulders, saying patiently, I'm the only one you can trust. I'm the only person that treats you well without any ulterior motives. Tell me where your father is. I'll help you. Olivia was spiraling. A lot of things were going through her mind. She didn't understand how things had become so complicated. A decent young man turned out to be a cruel demon. As for the man looking at her with deep affection, she knew he had his own schemes too. Who should she trust? Who could she trust? Ethan noticed her gaze, but he didn't try to force an answer out of her. It's okay if you don't want to tell me. I just want to remind you that Colin isn't the good person you thought he was. You only saw the good side of him and missed his evil side. In a sense, everyone in Toxic Hive is insane. They're very extreme. Liv, he tried to use softer methods on you last time, but they failed. He might use more forceful approaches to bend you to his will. Olivia agreed with Ethan that everyone in Toxic Hive was insane. Colin and Leia were both lunatics. She shouldn't try to anger them. They should be turning things down a notch recently. But for the sake of your safety, you need my protection. I won't force you to do anything, but you have to promise to let me protect you, okay? Ethan's attitude was very relaxed this time. He made several compromises. Olivia thought about her current situation. She was at the point of no return and had no one to rely on. Back then, she had nothing to live for and could kill herself anytime. But she had a lot of things on her mind at the moment. She had a lot of things she wanted to do. Olivia slowly looked up to meet Ethan's gaze. His eyes were filled with her. It seemed like she had no other options but him. Sticking with him was the best chance she had. At least he wouldn't hurt her for the time being and had the means to bring Jeff back to her. Can I trust you this time, Ethan? She asked softly. Ethan tried his best to hold back his excitement. Nodding, he said, Liv, I'd give you my life if you asked for it. Chapter 360. Olivia decided to stay at Ethan's side for the time being. One of the reasons she did that was because he had the means to protect her. The other was that Leia hated her. If she left, Leia would stop coming after her. She wanted to use Ethan to lure Leia out. She didn't tell Ethan that Colin was Leo yet. The current situation was still unclear. She had to keep an ace up her sleeve. She was sure that Jeff was safe in Colin's hands. She still needed him to operate on Jeff, so she didn't want to anger him. Olivia had slept through the day, so she didn't feel sleepy at night. She still couldn't get through to Colin's phone. Olivia pretended not to know his identity and sent him several messages. Other than him, Jack was also nowhere to be found. She went to get some water at 2:30 a.m. She saw that the lights were still on in Ethan's study. It seemed that he wasn't sleeping either. In the past, she would prepare some late-night snacks for him so that he wouldn't have to work on an empty stomach. But now, she just drank her water and returned to her room. She treated him like a stranger. The following day, Olivia went to the hospital early in the morning while escorted by bodyguards. Olivia promised Chloe that she would visit her frequently. Other than seeing Chloe, Olivia also had her reasons for going to the hospital. Chris looked like he hadn't gotten much rest. The fatigue was apparent on his face. She greeted him softly, "Hi, Mr. Carlton." Chris came back to his senses and looked at her. He tried to perk himself up. "You're here, Olivia. Come talk with Chloe for a bit. That'll improve her mood." "Sure, Mr. Carlton. By the way, how's the investigation into the postnatal care center going?" Sighing, Chris said slowly, "It's not going too well. The care center no longer exists." "It no longer exists. Even if the owner of the business closed it down, there should be records, right?" Chris shook his head, saying, "It's more complicated than that. The technology 20 years ago was less advanced. Even the medical records were handwritten. There are no digital copies. There was a fire at the care center the same year you were born. All the records were destroyed. 3 caregivers and 5 babies died in the fire." The business owner was faced with vast sums of compensation and massive public outcry. He was under tremendous pressure and died a few years later. Olivia frowned, saying, "That's too much of a coincidence. I think it's not by chance but intentional. Even if we know it's someone's doing, it'll be hard to investigate. The people connected to the incident are either dead or have moved away. The only leads were destroyed in the fire." Chris' eyes were lifeless. If he couldn't get any leads, Chloe's life would be at stake. If things continued this way, Chloe was as good as dead. Olivia's origins would remain shrouded in mystery. If the incident was intentional, it was possible that Olivia's mother wasn't even in the care center. Olivia could have been brought over to the center from somewhere else. Olivia couldn't figure out why someone would do this. Did the person hate her, the Fordhams, or the Parkers? The more she thought about it, the more confused she was. She wondered where her biological parents were and if the truth was also kept from them. "Don't worry, Liv. Even if we can't find Miss Parker's daughter, we might still find someone with compatible bone marrow. Donating bone marrow isn't like donating blood but more like donating an organ. In this day and age, how many people would be willing to do that for a stranger?" There was only exhaustion on Chris' face. Looking at him, Olivia was reminded of Jeff. She patted him on the shoulder and comforted him, saying, "You have to take care of yourself, Mr. Carlton. If you collapse, Miss Parker will lose her reason to hold on." Chris sighed as he looked at Olivia, who was so empathetic. He then thought about Marina. He was speechless and choked as he held Olivia's hand. "If only you were my daughter." The door was kicked open before Olivia could say anything.